In this tutorial, I like to talk more about gradients, and then I'll also talk a little bit about the pen tool and the 3D revolve tool. So gradients are something that you're going to start using quite a bit more of as you go along with your projects, especially getting into the compositions projects. And what I'll do here is start out with a new document, and I'll just call it gradients, and then I'll make it a 5x7 measured in inches. Click OK. Alright, and it just has a white background, should be fine for demonstration here. Now what I'm going to do, what I'll show you first is just a little lighting effect. I'm zoomed way in here, so hopefully you can see it a little bit better. I'll just show you a lighting effect, and that'll demonstrate gradient. Let's just do a real simple little spotlight so you can get used to using gradients. And you can use them pretty much anywhere, in your document. It just adds some depth to your picture. First off, I'm going to go up to the top. I'll turn off the stroke, because you really don't want to use a stroke most of the time when you're doing like lighting effects and gradients, because it creates an outline and it looks funny. So we won't use a stroke, and we'll just use a black color here to get started. What I'll do is just I'll start out and I'll just draw a square to give us like a background. Okay, we'll just use a section of our screen right here. Okay, so this will be our little backdrop. I mean, maybe you're going to do a postcard or something like that. So we'll use that as our background. Now let's go back again, and I'll deselect that, and let's grab, let's switch around the colors here, and let's do like a gray. And this will be like the pool of light from the spotlight. So we're just going to do a little spotlight shining right on the ground here. We'll make it sort of a medium light gray. And we're going to use the oval or the ellipse tool. And we're just going to draw that. We're just going to draw that little pool of light just like that. Okay, so you can do this. There's not a lot of steps here really, but you can follow along pretty much, and that'll represent the light shining from the spotlight. Spotlight's going to come from up here, kind of in the top left. All right, so we drew that. Now let's go ahead and draw the shape for the gradient for the light coming down. So we're going to use the pen tool to do that. And you also might want to have your layers up, as you're doing this if you don't already have them up. Okay, so I'll move my layers right over here, and I'll just go ahead and do a new layer. And on this new layer, I'll create the light. Now you don't have to do that because it'll automatically put it as a new object on there, but just for organization purposes here, I'll go ahead and make that the light. And I'm going to use the pen tool, and I'm going to go ahead and draw out the area of the light. So it's going to be a spotlight, so it's going to be kind of a triangle shape. So I'll start up here, and let me just come right down here. Okay, and I do want this to kind of have a curve to it that sort of follows the light, so I'll put a little curve there. And then you can see it is trying to complete it. I'll just go ahead and click to complete. Looks like that. Now it does cover up the light, but you get the idea of what we're doing here. So it's on a separate layer right there. I can toggle the visibility so I can see what I've just drawn. Now go ahead and select it, and what you want to do is get your gradient panel up. So here's my gradient panel. Let me move this over so you can see it. If you don't see your gradients, go to Window and Gradient. You can open that up. Now change the type to linear. Okay, and that you can also try radial, but linear is going to work because it's a spotlight, so it's moving in a straight line. Basically, it's changing color in a straight line. Now you can alter your gradient with the gradient panel, or you can use the tool over here on the left hand side. So the gradient tool, shortcut G, I'll go ahead and click that. You can see what it does. First off, you can rotate it. So I would go ahead and rotate it. Move your mouse over to the right hand side till you get a rotation tool, and rotate it like this. So it's going to be bright in the top left right here, and then we'll make it right here so it kind of comes down. Again, you might have to experiment with that a little bit, just kind of see what works for you. You can try all of these little sliders, because that sort of shows you how the color changes. You can change this there, bring that just like that. Okay, so lots of different options there that you can kind of play around with the gradient tool. Okay, so I've kind of got it going the direction that I want. Now let me come back over here to the gradient, to the panel. And what I'm doing here is basically going from a white, which is like a light color, like a light shining down, to transparent. Right now it's going to a dark color. This gradient slider, you can see. What I want to do is select this slider and change the opacity. Now these little sliders right here, these little stops, I think they're called gradient slider, they're color stops. You can add these in. If I added one, you can see I'll double click on it and I'll make it something really bright so you can see it. What that does is blend from a white to an orange to a black, and you can see it doing that right there. I don't want that, so I'll just drag that away and that'll just vanish. Okay, so I'll get rid of that. What I want to do is click the second stop on here, which is black, and just drop the opacity down to 0. Okay, and then I might want to change this around a little bit, maybe change the rotation, and I can start to get that light effect, like light shining down on it. Okay, you also might want that on top of your little pool of light. So that's a really simplified example of how you can add a little bit of perspective, a little bit of depth to your image, to your composition with a gradient. Now you can experiment with a radial gradient as well. You can do multiple gradients, and what we will also do is look at the gradient mesh tool. I'll probably post some tutorials for you on the gradient mesh tool, which allows you to really control your gradients even better based on a grid, based on a perspective. So we'll look at that as well. But this is a really simple example just to show you how you can incorporate that gradient. Alright, so let me move this down a little bit here, and let me talk a little more about the pen tool and the 3D revolve tool. So let me grab the pen tool, and let me just make this a solid color here so you can see it really well. Now what you've done so far with the pen tool looks like most people are doing a really good job, but one thing I do see is too many points from time to time. So this is a review. I think I've already mentioned this, but when you are drawing something, let's say you're going to draw like an apple or maybe half of the apple to do the 3D revolve. When you do that, you want to try to do that in as few points as you can. Okay, so you can see what I'm doing here. It's going to be a blue apple, obviously. Okay, something like this, to get started, that looks more like a heart, but you get the idea. So to do that shape, I really only had 3 points. Now, what does happen quite a bit here when you're getting used to it is you put too many points in. When you do that, that's really going to make it difficult to edit and make too many points, too many little angles on there. So again, the thing I would remind you of is try to do your shapes in the least amount of points possible when you are drawing that. Remember, you can always add points later. You probably know that, add points later. Okay, the other thing that I wanted to mention, I've actually got 3 or 4 questions, or 3 or 4 students contacting me with the same question: is you can't get your shapes to look right using the 3D revolve. And that is tricky, because what you generally do is draw a shape, add the 3D revolve, and then change the settings. And it's hard to get it to look the way you want it to sometimes, just changing the settings. So let me just review that again for you and talk about what that does. So if I do draw something on here, let me just draw, again, a little shape here. You can see, let's just go with that right there. Okay, I'll just go ahead and select it. I'll go Effect, 3D, and Revolve. And I'll do Preview. And we'll do Right Edge. Okay, so that creates a little top kind of shape, interesting little shape there. But what it does not have, let me just click OK. Well, I could change these settings and it's not going to do a whole lot. But what it does not have is a hollow appearance. So I get the question a lot of making it look a little more hollow, a little depth inside of it. That is all based on the shape that you draw. So what you need to start doing, if you like to use that tool, which it does have a place, you can do a lot with the tool with the effect. I should call it an effect, obviously, but you can do a lot with it, but it really comes down to what your shape looks like. So let me now draw a shape that looks more like this here. Let me do maybe a little edge at the top, and I'll come down. This is going to be like a vase or a cup or something. I'll come down here, and when I connect right here, so I just did straight lines so far. When I do connect, let me put just a little curve on there. Okay, so you can see that it looks about like that. Alright, now you can compare the two shapes. This comes down, has an area right there. That kind get you the hollow look. So now let me select it, go back to my effect, 3D revolve, and for this example I'm drawing the left side of the object here, so that means I need to go right edge from the right edge, preview. Okay, and now you can start to see that it is hollow. It might be hard for you to see it on there. Let me change let me go into more options right here, and I'll change the light so you can see that a little better. So I clicked more options, and then now you can see that is a little bit, that is hollow on the inside right there. You can change around your lighting effects and get some different looks with that, but that creates an edge and then an empty area inside right there. So check that out, and you can certainly try out your settings, but the biggest changes that you're going to get from using the 3D Revolve tool, it comes from the shape that you start with. So any shape that you start with, that's what you're going to want to do, is you're going to want to change the shape before you try to change the settings. Click OK. Let me go back to my appearance tab. Now if you do have this little toolbar shortcut tool right here, the appearance is what you'd be looking for. You can also go to window and appearance, and here's what the appearance panel looks like. Now you probably already know this, it's just review, but if you want to go back and get that 3D revolve and change it around, select your object, go to your appearance panel, and then click that 3D revolve. Okay, and then that's going to allow you to change it. You can try different things, different angles for all of this, and get some really cool effects on there. So that actually gives me like a half of it right there. Maybe I like that for whatever I'm doing. So lots of options here for the 3D Revolve tool, and just wanted to remind you of that if you are working on incorporating something like that into your project. Alright, that's it for this tutorial.